In the 1960s, a time when women were objectified, labeled, and forced to fit into unfulfilling roles that society wished upon them, Betty Friedan took a stand through her groundbreaking treatise on women's roles in society. With her book, The Feminist Mystique, Friedan spread the message that women are more than their spouses and should not be afraid to take risks in order to find true fulfillment in life, wherever that may be. Through her tireless advocacy on behalf of women's rights, Betty Friedan laid the path for women to take charge of their lives and change the course of feminism as we know it. In the 1940s, while men were at war in World War II, women were taking on jobs in male-dominated workplaces in order to provide for their families. Rosie the Riveter and other female empowerment slogans were nationally recognized, and the media portrayed women as strong and capable of doing what at the time was considered a man's job, working in manual labor. Then come the 50s, and the men returned. Women were forced out of work and into childbirth in apron and perfectly curled hair. The career girls of the 40s disappeared. Women were told by their husbands, friends, and the media that they should be happy. Friedan states that fulfillment as a woman had only one definition for the American woman after 1949, the housewife mother. The media suggested that as far as women are concerned, they should be cooking, cleaning, embracing their femininity, and asking no more out of life. Female fulfillment was defined as being a housewife mother. If a woman appeared in a newspaper or on television, they were advertising items and representing the American ideal of what a woman should be. Born on February 4th, 1921, Betty Naomi Goldstein grew up in the small town of Peoria, Illinois. While attending Peoria High School, Goldstein co-created a literary magazine with friends after being rejected by the school paper. Goldstein attended the all-girls Smith College from 1938 to 1942, and throughout her time there became known across campus for her controversial but well-recognized poetry and journalism. She participated in a fellowship program with the University of California, Berkeley, and then journeyed to New York and worked as a reporter for labor union publications, where she met her husband, Carl Friedan. After Friedan became pregnant with her first child, Daniel, in 1948, she was wrongfully fired. This left Friedan at home without employment, wondering, "Is this it?" Friedan became confused and anxious. All of the undermining and duplicitous ways women were clearly devalued resonated with Friedan and began to overflow her conscience. Friedan conducted a survey of Smith College graduates about their overall satisfaction in life in hope of better understanding how gender roles of the 60s played into society. The survey confirmed that many other women were restless and ready for change. With this idea in mind, Friedan began writing a book that would explore her opinions, observations, and perceptions of women's rights in society. When published in 1963, The Feminist Mystique quickly gained national attention as Friedan had challenged the current gender status quo. The Feminist Mystique encompasses the feeling of an invisible mask women were forced to wear in order to fulfill the role of a happy and simple-minded housewife. Friedan wanted to spread a message of female empowerment and persistence to young women around the world. After publishing her book, Friedan became a force for change and equality for women across the country.
It was really mind-boggling what she wrote, because she put into words what all the rest of us were feeling. I was a young married woman in that time. We knew that things weren't going all that well for us. We knew there was something wrong. We didn't fit into the mold that society said we should be in. And when I first read her book, I thought, oh my gosh, she's talking about me. And she was talking about every other woman in the country at that time.
In 1966, 3 years after The Feminist Mystique was published, Betty Friedan contacted a woman named Dr. Polly Murray, who was an active advocate for equality in the workplace, especially regarding the hiring process. Upon meeting, the two shared so many views on women's rights that a collaboration was born. After being told that their opinions had no authority during a conference that was petitioning to force national compliance with Title VII, around 15 to 20 women gathered with Friedan to discuss ways to gain attention in a time when gender equality was not the nation's primary obligation. Here, the National Organization for Women was born. Annalise Clapp wrote about the organization's purpose, stating that it was to take action to bring women into full participation in the mainstream of American society now, assuming all the privileges and responsibilities thereof in truly equal partnership with men. By October of 1966, the NOW had already gained 300-plus male and female members who were equally dedicated and determined. Friedan was elected as the NOW's first president, a term which she served from 1966 to 1970. In 1966, Friedan was quoted in a report about the conference stating that we shared a moving moment of realization that we had now indeed entered history. A year or so later, the NOW officially took on the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment and the repeal of all anti-abortion laws. In 1969, Betty Friedan established an organization called the National Association for the Repeal of Abortion Laws that would fight for the legalization of abortion. It is known today as NARAL Pro-Choice America.
She carried that sense of the possibilities of collective action with her. And I think that's an important thing to understand about Friedan. She wasn't just saying that women had personal problems that they needed to solve. She was saying that problems they thought were their own were broadly shared, and that the way to address those problems was through collective action.
On the 50th anniversary of the passing of the 19th Amendment, Betty Friedan organized a protest called the Women's Strike for Equality. Friedan had a vision of women across the country being drawn out of their homes for a day to focus on bringing attention to the current unfair distribution of domestic labor. On August 26, 1970, women across the country came to New York City to march for equal opportunity rights in the workplace, as well as a women's right to abortion. Police tried to restrain the crowd, but the women pushed through, chanting and holding signs that stated, "Don't iron while the strike is hot." The strike only made certain that women across the country were hungry for equality and would not stop fighting until they had their rights. The strike received national attention, with many people sharing their positive and negative opinions about it. Many feminists who participated were frustrated by the negative ways the media had portrayed the event. However, not all response was negative. Time magazine published a series of uplifting articles covering the movement, and President Richard Nixon deemed the strike credible upon issuing a proclamation. The Women's Strike for Equality confirmed that women across the nation were willing to march united to take a stand for equality.
She always had a full view of the possibilities of feminism, or of who could be a feminist, even in her own moment. And she was famous as someone who both promoted feminism and women's lib, and was worried about expanding the agenda too far.
After the success of the strike, Betty Friedan settled down and took a break from public speaking and began writing. In 1981, she published her second book called The Second Stage, where Friedan argues that communication is required in a successful marriage. Then again, in 1993, Friedan wrote a memoir-style book entitled Fountain of Age, in which she reflects on the beauty and triumphs of growing old and how all people can discover a new purpose to their life as time goes by. Until the very end, Friedan saw aging as a beautiful thing that opened up a world of possibilities. Friedan passed away due to heart failure on February 4, 2006, in Washington, D.C. If not for women like Betty Friedan, who in spite of harsh criticism prevailed and saw equality as a necessity and not just another issue, we would not be where we are today. However, it is important to acknowledge that the feminine mystique could only be applied to a select group of people living in America at the time it was published. Ashley Fetters of The Atlantic writes about Friedan's book, stating that it was only applicable to a select group of college-educated, middle and upper-class married white women, housewives bored with leisure with the home, with children, with buying products, who wanted more out of life. Feminist Bell Hooks also rightfully points out that the book did not account for who would be called in to take care of the children while their mothers were at work. It lacked clarity. In addition, some women became frustrated due to the fact that they were ostracized for wanting to be a housewife. Nonetheless, Friedan's legacies are stronger than ever. Betty Friedan wanted women to never stop fighting. Her purpose was rooted in taking action and not sitting back and waiting for a man to do so for you. She wanted women across the world to always remember this: you are more than your spouse. You have a life and you are entitled to live it to the fullest. Seek out opportunities for yourself and don't be afraid to take a stand with your own opinion. You are powerful and strong. Betty Friedan never stepped back and waited. She took a stand for women's rights because she knew that if women never came together to fight a common enemy of gender inequality, no one would. Betty Friedan and feminists alike re-sparked a forgotten movement that would ignite the passion for equality that lives on in our world today.